Yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult subject for anybody nowadays. And the reason I didn't want it coming into rugby is because it doesn't matter what side of the argument you stand on, you're going to get backlash regardless. That is the crux of it. I mean, we're an age where people in the middle are going to have to start speaking up because the fringes are starting to take over. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, people need to find their voice.
All right, Courtney, mate, we're back. Rugby's back. I think we're all happy to see it back. I mean, the landscape's changed, right, for a number of reasons. There's a lot gone on with finances for the game, obviously the pandemic, no crowds. As a player being back, what kind of game have we walked back into, or have you walked back into?
Yeah, it's pretty different. The no crowds thing's quite interesting. Obviously, you can hear the other team's calls and everything like that, so it's quite different. And then we've got a lot of stuff going on outside of rugby that's kind of come into rugby and stuff like that. But it's good to be about playing, mate, to be honest.
Is there anything different you think that could have been done for the players across the board?
In terms of the pandemic and all that kind of...
Well, I just mean how it's managed, because you've got Premiership Rugby at the head, right? And they're meant to facilitate, they're the governing body. You've got the RPA who look after the players. They did great things when I was there. Got a TV that I still got off the RPA, got a great discount off it. But, these are the kind of things, and they are unprecedented, but these are the kind of thing when it comes to contracts, when it comes to money, when it comes to player welfare, that you shouldn't be having to worry about, right? It should be done externally. And I just wonder, it doesn't have to be, but I just wonder if there's anything you think that could have been done differently.
No, we handled it quite positively as a club. I think the best thing about it was the transparency of it, and the club made sure we were very much involved in looking at finances and just being, very transparent in what their thoughts were, so then we could collect our thoughts and go back to them. And I think that made life a lot easier, and it meant that we were all kind of able to get on the same page. Obviously, nobody was really too happy to be taking pay cuts and stuff like that. And but at the end of the day, the reality of the situation is that's just what had to happen.
Dylan, right? I want to talk about Dylan. Dylan Hart, former teammate of yours. He's bringing out a book. I don't know whether it's out yet, but there's some really interesting stuff around there, around Eddie Jones. I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't seen the book, no. No. I've seen him advertise it. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, well, I just want to read it quickly. The Eddie Jones stuff's really interesting in itself, but I know you've got a different relationship and a good relationship with him. But one of the statements that he made in the book called The Hurt is he mentions about the generations of players, so our generation, have been car crash dummies for sport and transition from semi-professionalism, right? So he's talking a bit around player welfare. But I imagine you're good mates with Dylan, but you're also a player that goes around absolutely smoking people. So when you hear a statement like that where he talks about, it's quite a bold statement, it's quite a strong statement to make. What do you make of him saying stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly haven't thought about it, and I'm on the same side as you, where I understand, because it's the physicality of the sport that brings a lot of viewers in. Do you know what I mean? And it's actually the physicality of the sport that I enjoy as well. So I don't know if I feel like I've been a crash test dummy. I just feel like this is what I signed up for. So this is what I'm here for.
Listening to you on that other podcast speak highly about Eddie, how is your relationship with him? I know you've spoken about it before, but I think it'd be good for this platform to hear about what he said to you when he came in and how that's affected you and lifted your performances and the way that you're playing.
Yeah, certainly. I think me and Eddie had quite a different relationship to Dills and Eddie. Like, because I suppose because Dills was a captain as well, he really did, ride him pretty hard. Do you know what I mean? So he definitely got the brunt of Eddie, whereas I'm just kind of just floating around basically. I do my leadership bits and stuff like that, but ultimately Eddie we have different personalities, obviously me and Dill anyway, so he doesn't really get on me like that. but in terms of when Eddie first came in, I was just kind of going through the motions in my career, really. I was, still starting regularly for England, was quite young and just wasn't working hard enough, as hard as I should have been. And I think he recognised that, and he opened my eyes up to how much I'd fallen off, which obviously was disappointing for me, to not just to hear, but to know. Do you know what I mean? Because I did waste a portion of my career just going through the motions and, not being hungry enough, basically.
And what was he looking for then? So he says that, you weren't doing enough, or, lazy, or whatever, terms he threw at you. But what kind of stuff? I mean, was it work rate off the ball? Was it like influence and stuff around the breakdown? What kind of stuff specifically was he saying to you?
So I wasn't lazy. I was still doing a lot of hard graft, but I've moved away from the kind of ball carrying aspect of my game, and I was concentrating pretty much just on kind of work rate and my defensive stuff like I normally do. But he wanted me to add that kind of ball carrying element that I had when I was younger, and that I lost a lot of confidence in. So that drove me to put a big emphasis on that in my training, do loads of extras, and get my acting gear, basically.
A lot of people asking as well, Courtney, around positional stuff. Have you got preference to where you play?
I don't really. I find it quite interesting that is it interesting? It's quite eye-opening that if you play. So I could play a game, identical game at back row and second row, and it could be considered a good game at second row and a very average or poor game at back row. Like, there's a very stark difference between people's expectations of a second row and a number 6, especially when you play or when you're seen as a second row and you play 6. Do you know what I mean? So you're certainly under more scrutiny when you play 6. Having said that, especially when I'm on good form, I prefer playing 6.
You mentioned about politics and that you're interested in. How are you finding that? Because you are opening yourself up with the world that we live in, the social media, the woke folk on Twitter that that you've called out. How difficult are you finding to kind of migrate through that situation? Are you quite happy to put yourself out there from your social stance, political stance, whatever you want to say? Because it can be quite divisive, right? Whichever way you go. Right. And I try and sit in a kind of neutral and watch it unfold, because I feel as if I'm not as educated as I probably should be with a lot of the stuff out there, but you clearly are.
Well, I'm educated on certain things, and I'll go out on my way to make sure that I know, the facts first, and then try and make a logical conclusion from there. I suppose the reason I kind of got into my politics is because I felt like our kind of freedoms were being slowly taken away from us. And I know that sounds quite dramatic, but when you look at some of your most basic kind of human rights freedoms, you talk about your freedom of speech being probably the most important one. So your freedom to express your own opinions and counter other opinions is very important. But we both know, like both of us sitting here and everybody listening will know, that there are certain subjects that they now can't talk about, can't express their opinion on, unless the opinion is coming from as a certain thing, or coming from a certain place, certain side of the argument. And that, to me, is an infringement on someone's freedom. I think that everybody, regardless of what they look like or where they come from, should be able to express their opinion, and that is a basic human right, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. And there's a lot of talk at the minute. We've seen the Black Lives Matters movement, the rugby and racism, and it's become more and more apparent in the general worldwide population over recent weeks, right? And I know that you've got an opinion on that. It'd be really good to hear about it, because it was a talking point before the game at the weekend, right? About how lads would deal with the situation, the whole kneeling situation around it, the standing, who was going to do what the teams were going to do. I know that Maro, obviously Genji and Ugo were kind of headlining. They put themselves at the front and centre of that for BT Sport. Have you got an opinion on that, about how you spoke to the players, how you were approached to speak about these things?
Yeah, that's actually, sorry, that I got it confused at the start. That's what I was kind of talking about at the start. Knowing politics and what it is at the minute, it's just become very divisive, like I said. And we didn't want that. And I could see it coming a mile off. Because it basically, what kneeling and what Black Lives Matter represents, is different for different people. So some people see it as one thing, and obviously other people see it as another. And that's not to say anybody's in the wrong or right, but it's basically how deep you've looked into the situation, possibly. You know what I mean? And whether you can differentiate between the saying that is Black Lives Matter, which of course they do, and the kind of organisation movement, which is, in my opinion, something a bit different.
Have the league been in contact with you? Have you been approached to talk about these things? And I'm kind of labouring the point, because it is such a current thing, and it shows the education, shows the society that we're from. That I kind of stutter my way through asking the questions, right? Because that's the world that we live in, and you don't want to say the wrong thing, but you want to say the right thing, and I should say the right thing. And it was interesting hearing Genji talk about that. I think he contextualizes it really well. But I saw on your social media some of the stuff that you're saying. There's a bit of backlash, right? What do you think when you see that? Like, what do you think the club think? What do you think the Prem Rugby think? Are you bothered, or do you think it's important that in your standing now in the game of rugby, but in life, that you should be able to have that platform and express some opinions?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult subject for anybody nowadays, and the reason I didn't want it coming into rugby is because it doesn't matter what side of the argument you stand on, you're gonna get backlash regardless, because it is just incredibly divisive. And that's why we as a club went about it in a different direction. In terms of what I think about all of it, is I generally think that there's a bigger picture basically going on in America, and we've basically just had some spillover in Britain, and that's what you're seeing here, is basically a watered down version of what is happening in America. And it's on people to go out and have a look at the organisation, what's on the website, and have a look at what's going on in America, because that is actually the bigger picture here. I don't want to go like too far into it, do you know what I mean? But people need to realise why some people are not on board with it, and it's not just call them racist because they don't want to get behind it. Do you know what I mean? Go and talk to them, understand, ask them why it is they don't want to get behind it. And if it is because they don't think Black Lives Matter, then maybe you're right about them. But if they say because it represents something completely different, then maybe have a think about it. Go and have a look into it yourself. Do you know what I mean? That is the crux of it. I mean, we're an age where people in the middle are going to have to start speaking up, because the fringes are starting to take over. Do you know what I mean? So people need to find their voice.
Exactly, and that can-do message and the opportunity was the last thing that I wanted to kind of finish on, because you're passionate about that, right? Making your own opportunity, telling kids they can do things, telling your kids they can do things regardless of the colour of their skin. I think that's such a powerful message, because listening to you speak and some of the stuff that I've read and trying to educate myself on these things, everything is suppressing people, right? For this reason, you can't do this because of this, you can't do this because of the colour of your skin, you can't do this because history says that you can't do these things. That's a positive message. I mean, just to reinforce that again, I mean, that's how you go about your life, right?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I'm a mixed race lad, and I come from not a lot of money. So, I grew up in the arse end of Northampton. But because I had good parents and they give me good values, I was able to do well. And you know, I haven't flipping completed life. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not. I'm gonna have to go back to work after I retire. I'll pick rugby, and rugby's not the best paying sport in the world, but it is what it is. It's my choice, so I stand by my decisions, and I'll be accountable for them decisions. But yeah, I haven't. It's not like I've made it, but I've done all right for myself. And for me, most people can be successful, and in terms of what that means, what success means to me is putting your children in a better place than you started, giving them better opportunities than you had. Like, my dad is still not worth, you know, much in terms of wealth, but he is very successful to me. He came here at 12 years old with nothing at all, and he managed to give me a life, give me opportunities in life to put myself where I am today. And to me, that's what we can all do.
Absolutely, mate. A little joke, mate, you're doing all right for yourself. You've got panelling in the background, I can see on camera. So some panelling, mate. That's what they say. I need some in the garage. It looks like a studio. It's not. But Courtney, mate, that's class. Thanks very much, mate. I really appreciate that for talking to me on some tough matters, but obviously about rugby. You know, good luck for the season, body, and all that.
Appreciate it, mate. Take care of yourself.
Cheers, buddy.